Alrighty, folks, welcome. As you can tell, you can see my latest book, the Core Integration Therapy book. Thank you, Elena, for holding it up. So here we are. Let's change it back to me. Thanks, Joanne, for joining. Good to see you. And here you are, or here I am. I hope you guys are having a good Thursday morning. And it's a beautiful day over here. Hopefully you've got a beautiful day over there, wherever you are. So today's talk is going to be about exploring fascia. It's called Exploring Fascia. We're going to talk a little bit about what we know, what we don't know about fascia, and how we in the Morales method are working it. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. We will be archiving this video. It will be available for a while. And these periscopes are also going to be available, and we're actually doing our best to archive them and put them in Facebook and YouTube. So we are doing our best to put those into the other channels. Speaking of Facebook, we do have a private Facebook page. It's called the Morales Method Forum, and that private Facebook page is available for folks who are certified. So folks who are certified, who go through the certification, actually have access to this private page where there is exclusive content that you don't get through these other channels. But we are hopefully making an announcement soon within the year regarding that page. So anyway, with regards to exploring fascia, let's get started. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and I will take the time to answer. And if you like what you're hearing, feel free to heart it. Also, we are growing our Periscope, and we're really lucky to have lots of folks that are coming in from all different parts of the world. But if you'd like to share this link with people that you know, then feel free to share. Alrighty. So first things first.
How do people heart it?
So you can heart by double tapping on the glass. So just like that, double tap on the glass just 2 times and you can heart it. All right? So thank you for that. So let's get started with fascia. And fascia is an interesting thing as a rolfer and structural integrator. There's a lot of focus on fascia, and I think that it's got a great place in our work. But we also have to understand what it is that we're dealing with, what it is that we're doing. And I like this kind of example that we have with regards to an orange as a way to show what fascia is. So imagine we are this orange, and this is a great way to kind of show this idea of fascia. So imagine we are this orange, and we can peel away at this skin, and I'm going to do this live on camera in front of the whole world here. Peel this orange, and this is a great way to represent what fascia is about. And I'm going to tell you a story as I'm peeling this orange. I'm actually going to take a dissection class in a few weeks through Gil Headley. If anyone has not heard of Gil Headley, I highly recommend you take his dissection courses. I'm going to take his in San Francisco, I believe April 7th through 11th, something like that, or 12th, 6 days of cutting people up. The fuzz, yes. He's got this famous video on YouTube called The Fuzz. Go check it out. So here I am already starting to peel away at this orange. And you can start to see this kind of white, the pith of the orange. And we can imagine this as the idea of superficial fascia. One thing I want to do before I'm going to peel away this layer, before I even pull this layer out, is this piece here. This to me is a really interesting piece because it's almost like peeling away at the core of this orange. And this is something that's key to some of the things that I do with regards to core integration as a way of structural integration. So here, we can actually see this concept of the core and how the core runs through. Different from an abdominal core that as thought of in Pilates or sometimes in yoga, we're actually thinking of core as something that runs through the whole body, similar to the spinal column, the pathway of the Kundalini, do we just look up the fuzz? Yeah, you can type in, if you were going to look up the YouTube video, you can look up Gil Hedley fuzz. Hedley, Hedley, fuzz. So here we are, almost done with peeling away at the orange. And what's interesting here is we've got this whole system, right? And we know that in this orange there's tons of juice, but yet it's not pouring out and spilling out because it's nicely self-contained within this connective tissue of the orange, just like we are self-contained within our connective tissue and within our skin. If we start to open this up, just like so, we start to see compartments, and here we can imagine this compartment is, let's say, the leg, and this is again contained but yet still part of this whole. So we can see this as sort of the fascia around the leg, maybe hamstrings and quads and adductors and all these muscles within the leg. So we can put this, put the rest of the orange away and look at just the leg, and we can separate them here, and we can say, oh, maybe these are the quads here, and we can then further separate this into not just quad muscle, but particular muscle cells, different muscle cells. And we can see that even though there's juice in here, they are still self-contained. Each one of these little pieces of orange are self-contained within their own fascial layer. It's a great representation of how fascia honeycombs through this orange and through us as well. So here we can imagine just how throughout the whole body fascia is. It sounded like Yoda there for a little bit. And we understand this, we know this, people have seen this example many times, but then, the question comes up, well, what is it that we're doing when we're working fascia? What's going on when we're working fascia? Is it as simple as when we massage this fascia, everything just gets looser and more fluid? We used to think that, but now we have a different understanding of what may be happening here with the fascial tissue. And a lot of it comes from a lot of current research, a lot of stuff happening from, I'm going to put this aside here, a lot of stuff happening in the world of fascia research from Dr. Robert Schleip. So if you want to read up and get updated on what's happening with fascia, look up what's happening with Dr. Schleip, Schleip. He's got a lot of other great researchers that are contributing to the world of fascia and understanding what exactly is happening when we work tissue. Okay, let me just show you a book real quick. One of the books I recommend that people read if they want to get updated on fascia is to read this book right in here. Fascia, the Tensional Network of the Human Body. It's a great book. Like I said, we've got information from Schleip, from Chaitao, from Huijing, a lot of great information in here. We used to think back in the day that we were stretching fascia. And we know now that we cannot physically, under the stress that we can create and the forces we can create, we know that we can't stretch fascia. We can't actually physically stretch these fascial fibers. I taught this in a class once, and a funny story, I taught this in a class and there was a student that was very adamant that she could stretch fascia, and her proof for this was that she had a chicken farm, and she said, well, I can stretch fascia, and when I go and kill my chickens and I clean my chickens, I'm cleaning, plucking them, I can see that I'm stretching this fascia, and I can see the fascia stretch, so I can do it. I know I can. And I said, yeah, you very well can in a dead chicken, but doing it in a live person is a whole different story. So we're not actually physically stretching these collagen fibers. And that's another thing. We understand now what is happening here, what is fascia made up of. And fascia is made up of these collagen fibers, these proteins, and it's all made up of proteins. There are no cells. Fascia is not made up of cells. Fascia is made up of proteins. Yes, they can honeycomb and encapsulate cells, muscle cells, nerve cells, different type of cells, but fascia itself is a collection of proteins. And at this point, we believe that they are organized in a random pattern. And I think it's because we're not sure what pattern they're organized in. We thought at some point that they were organized in a fractal pattern, but we understand now that it's actually a little more random, possibly chaotic than we actually thought. And that goes back to one of the original videos made about 13 years ago now, I think at this point, that called fascia, I believe, a multi-microvascular collagenic dynamic absorption system. So that was the original, that was the name that they gave it, but we all recognize it as fascia. So that video is also available on YouTube. You can look it up, called Strolling Under the Skin. Strolling Under the Skin, you can look it up. It's out there on YouTube. And you can see one of the great things and neat things about that video is that you can actually see fascia in vivo in a live person put under stress, put under pressure. So that's kind of neat to see it that way. Whereas before you would see it, like, for example, in a cadaver, Gil Hedley's videos, or you would see it in a in like an Auckland anatomy video where it was kind of well preserved. That's one of the first times where we actually saw it live. So, going back to fascia and what we're doing, what we're not doing, these proteins, these collagen fibers, are not getting physically stretched when we are working on them. So we know that now. So stretching the fascia is not a possibility. We do know that fascia is hydrophilic, that it takes in fluid. So under mechanical pressure, it actually absorbs fluid. So we know that's happening. We know that it's taking in fluid from the interstitial space. How much fluid? That is another subject to research. There is some information pointing to that amount of fluid being extremely small. And some people say that it's too small to make a difference. Some people say that it's enough when we multiply it across a vast amount of space, a vast amount of territory, for example, an arm, that it's enough to make a difference. So at this point, the research is pending, and I'm actually continuing my research to see, is that amount of fluid that it takes in enough to make a difference? We do know that when we work tissue, when we do our deep tissue work, when we do our myo-fascial work, that we feel we feel reaction, and we have lots of words for this reaction. We call it lengthening, even though it's not lengthening. We call it stretching, even though it's not stretching. We call it releasing, whatever that is. We're still kind of figuring out what does that mean to say release. We call it softening, we call it melting. You know, we have all these words for what we're calling what's happening under our thumb, our knuckle, our elbow. But to get to the heart of what's actually happening is still a process. We're still learning about fascia. One of the things we do know is that it acts as a energy absorbing system. It does absorb energy. We can feel the transmission of force through that system, just like we would feel through lots of other parts of our body. So we understand that we can measure it that way. We understand it that way. So again, going back, what exactly are we doing when we're working fascia? Well, you know, I go back to a lot of the research done by Schleip, and to see what actually may be happening under that model. But before I go there, let's backtrack just a little bit with the research that Ida did. Back in the day, she proposed that the fascia went from a gel state to a sol state, that it went from a more kind of solid form to a more fluid form. And this fluid dynamic is something that we felt, right? And this was a support for what I was talking about just now, this hydrophilic property of fascia and how it became more fluid and how it became more pliable, right? And under our tool, knuckle, soft fist, elbow, whatever. So that's what we thought was happening. But something else now currently is taking most of our brain space and most of our thinking as far as what we think is happening. And what we think is happening now is there's a little bit of a loop, and there are actually a few type of loops that may be happening in the type of work that we do. And this is actually something that really does kind of jive with me, because I've seen this, and the way that I work is along these same lines. And what I'm talking about is how we're not necessarily physically changing the state of the fascia itself, but we are actually working, when we're working myofascially, affecting the nervous system in such a way that it may affect the physical form itself. So what I mean by this is, when we work myofascially, we're putting pressure on an area. Yes, there is this interstitial fluid dynamics that happens, and we know now that a lot of the fluid that comes into the system comes from plasma, blood plasma, that goes into the system. That also we know affects blood pressure. That comes into the system and changes the properties of that area that you're working on. But then it keeps on going further, because we also know that there are nerve receptors, mechanoreceptors, and students in my class have heard me talk about how we are actually also affecting mechanoreceptors. So when we affect mechanoreceptors, we then go to the wiring of the system, the wiring of our client, go to their nervous system. And when we affect that nervous system, we're sending signals through via the nervous system. That will affect the tonus of the motor unit, i.e. the muscle in the area. So we are affecting the tone of the area, and then that can start to affect that area that we're feeling. So not only is there some fluid dynamic happening, but there's also a change in the tonus in the tissue. And that's when we start to feel that palpatory response, that palpable response of softening, lengthening, fluidity, all of these words that we have, stretching, all of these words that we have started to fit in to fill in the blank of what we're feeling. So that's one of the things that's happening when we're actually working fascia. And I believe that, when we feel, we start to put some sort of intervention, let's say a elbow, knuckle, what have you. There is an autonomic nervous system response. There's also a fluid response with the interstitial fluid, and then there's a tonus response to the tissue that we're working on, and then that's what we start to feel. So that's that kind of loop. We feel that stretch, release, soften, what have you, whatever we're calling it now. So working mechanoreceptors then starts to become starts to come to the forefront of what we're actually doing. And the way I think of it is, we're working the hardware, the actual structure, to affect the software, which is the nervous system, to then go back and affect the hardware itself. So the hardware to the software to the hardware. And some other modalities start to think this way as well. Some other modalities, I had the extreme pleasure of meeting Dr. Palomar, Jose Palomar, the developer of proprioceptive deep tendon reflex. And he talked about how he works the software to affect the hardware. And that really, when he said that, that really jived with me, because I've been talking about hardware and software in the past couple of years, and that really kind of sparked a light bulb moment for me, because that's very similar to what we're doing when we're mechanically working the soft tissue. So that's the big piece that I wanted to mention. When I titled this video "Exploring Fascia," That's actually the name of a class that I'm teaching. I'm teaching this class. It's a one-day class called Exploring Fascia. And I like the term exploring because we're still exploring fascia. We're still exploring this way of working. And you might be thinking, well, Marty, if it's in the nervous system level, then how come, why don't we just work the nervous system? Why do we have to work the actual fascial structure? Well, the working the fascial structure is one way in. And I believe that certain practitioners may gravitate towards working structure. Certain clients may also gravitate towards getting structure worked. So I think it's one way in, and if it resonates with the practitioner and with the client, then we have a great coupling of modality and recipient to the modality where we can start to see effects. So it's one road that leads to Rome. It's not the only, and I like it, and I like how we can become what I call structural artists, working this fascial and myofascial structure using this concept, right? One more thing that I wanted to mention is that I will be in the UK in June. I will be at the British Fascia Symposium in June, learning lots more about fascia, stuff that I want to pick up and share with you guys when I come back. So I'm looking forward to going there. If you're planning on being there, please let me know. Maybe we can get together at the conference. I will be also taking certain classes while I'm out there, so I'm looking forward to seeing some of you out there. I will be seeing my instructors from Poland. They will be there, and also colleagues from Brazil who will also be there. So looking forward to being there in June and coming back and sharing some interesting knowledge with you all. So really, that's it. I'm just looking at the clock, getting the time. I can't believe I spoke for 20-something minutes on fascia. The time flew by for me. I love talking about this stuff. So that's really what I wanted to share, folks. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. You can also post your questions on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, what have you. And just think about the big takeaway here is not only are we working fascia, but we're also affecting the nervous system, the hardware to the software that eventually affects the hardware. All right, with the thinking of the order of complexity and the thinking of core integration, which is my way of structural integration. We do have other concepts that come into play that help us to work the fascia. So we can talk about those later on. But anyway, I will leave you with this, and please share this with your colleagues. And you're happy that presentations will be archived. Me too. I'm happy that we will be able to archive these for future, and that we will be putting these on YouTube. So please share, and look forward to seeing you in future Periscopes and future workshops. Alrighty, bye folks.